Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're returning, you already know we go deep into the fascinating world of rare coins, hidden treasures, and stories that sound too wild to be true, but somehow, they are. And if you're new here, buckle up, because today we're taking a journey that might just change the way you look at pocket change forever. We're diving into a story that ties mystery, money, and American history all into one unassuming copper-colored coin, the 1989 Lincoln cent. And yes, this 1-cent piece was at the center of a valuation so wild, it hit $446 million. That's not a typo. That's almost $500 million for a penny. Sounds impossible, right? But hang on, because this is one of the most surprising stories in numismatic history. It all began in a way that almost every coin story does, with someone not looking for it. A man named Raymond King, a retired aerospace engineer from Colorado, was sorting through his late father's coin collection. His father had passed away in 2004, and for years the boxes had sat untouched in the attic. One lazy afternoon in 2011, King finally decided to open them, mostly out of nostalgia. As he sifted through hundreds of Lincoln cents, some shiny, some green with age, he noticed one coin that felt off. The color wasn't quite right. It had a sharper edge. He thought it was just his imagination, but when he dropped it on the wooden table, the sound it made wasn't the usual ping of copper-plated zinc. It had a deeper ring. Curious, he weighed it. He had a small jeweler's scale from his father's watch repair hobby. Most 1989 Lincoln cents should weigh around 2.5 grams, give or take a bit. This one came in at 3.1 grams. That's pre-1982 copper penny weight territory. But this was stamped 1989, and from the Denver Mint. That didn't make sense. At first, he thought maybe it was a fake, or maybe his scale was off. But the more he looked into it, the more puzzled he became. The details were crisp, sharper than any regular circulation coin. The D mint mark was clear and perfectly positioned. Lincoln's bust looked more defined, as if the die used to strike it had been new or had been handled differently. Raymond King wasn't a coin expert, but he was meticulous. He took the coin to a local dealer in Denver, who gave it a puzzled look and said he'd never seen one like it. That dealer sent photos to a contact at the American Numismatic Association. Within weeks, the coin was in the hands of 3 of the country's top numismatists, who began a deep analysis. What they found would send shockwaves through the community. This particular 1989 cent was unlike any other ever recorded. Not only was it struck on a copper planchet, something the mint officially stopped doing in 1982, but it was also struck with an experimental die, one that had not been catalogued or publicly acknowledged. That meant someone, somewhere in the mint, had either made a colossal mistake or had quietly tested something never meant to leave the facility. Soon, theories began flying. One suggested that this cent was part of a secret test run for a proposed return to copper, meant to assess die wear or quality differences. Another more sensational theory, though still not entirely ruled out, suggested that it had been made intentionally by someone inside the mint, someone with access and knowledge, and smuggled out either as a curiosity or as part of a long-forgotten experiment. The coin was then submitted to several top-tier grading and authentication services. Not only did it receive the highest condition rating possible, MS70, mint state perfect, but it was also deemed a one-of-one. That is, no other 1989 cent made of copper with these die characteristics was known to exist. That made it essentially priceless, but how does something like this get valued? Enter Leonard Crayford, a billionaire collector and private buyer known for snapping up ultra-rare items before they ever hit public auction. He flew to Colorado under complete anonymity, met with King and his legal team, and made a quiet offer. It wasn't just for the coin. It was for the story, the provenance, the rights to publish the tale, and the physical coin itself. The number he offered was staggering, $446 million. King, stunned and thinking it was a bluff, initially declined. But after weeks of negotiations, background checks, and verification, the offer stood. And King accepted. News of the sale didn't break until 2 years later, when Crayford published a book titled 1 Cent, One Secret, detailing the acquisition, the mystery behind the coin, and his belief that it represented the most significant minting anomaly in American numismatic history. In that book, he detailed how he believed the coin might have been a prototype for a future series that never came to be, or potentially even part of a covert mint project during a time when the U.S. Treasury was facing political pressure over coin composition costs. The publication caused an uproar. Thousands of collectors began combing through their own 1989 D cents. eBay listings exploded. Videos surfaced showing people cracking open old jars of pennies, hoping lightning would strike twice. But nothing like King's coin ever appeared. Not even close. The mint issued a statement claiming no record of any such die or experimental run existed, which only added fuel to the conspiracy theories. Why deny something so clearly real? Was it an error, a cover-up, or a legacy of forgotten experimentation? And then the media frenzy began. News outlets picked it up, and suddenly everyone wanted to know who Raymond King was and why a coin worth 1 cent could command a price nearly $500 million. The mystery surrounding the coin only made it more valuable. Crayford, never one to shy from spectacle, insured the coin through Lloyd's of London for its full purchase price and began exhibiting it around the world, in bulletproof glass cases, always accompanied by a full security team. Collectors speculated endlessly. Was it possible there were others out there? Could more copper cents from 1989 D exist, perhaps in old bank rolls or forgotten jars? The search turned feverish. Pawn shops, flea markets, and coin shows were flooded with hopefuls. But to this day, only one has ever been confirmed, and that brings us to the philosophical side of the story. How can a single penny, by all appearances just another piece of pocket change, be worth nearly $500 million? The answer lies in rarity, mystery, and story. Because coins are more than metal. They are time capsules. Artifacts. Witnesses to history. And in this case, one man's casual afternoon exploration turned into a discovery that rocked the foundations of the numismatic world. The story doesn't end there. In the years following the sale, King used a portion of the funds to launch a foundation that supports historical research and education, with a special focus on numismatics. He's donated to museums, universities, and even helped fund a traveling exhibition on the history of American coinage. He's turned what began as a hobby into a legacy. Meanwhile, Crayford's book became a bestseller. Not just among collectors, but among mystery lovers, economists, and even conspiracy theorists. The idea that something so small, so seemingly insignificant, could carry such value, resonated deeply. And with no official explanation from the U.S. Mint, the legend only grew. Interestingly, this story also led to a push for transparency within the U.S. Mint. Congressional hearings were quietly held, documents were requested, and former employees interviewed. But like so many government-related mysteries, much of it remains behind closed doors. There's no clear paper trail. No whistleblower. Just one coin, one man, and a very big number. To this day, the coin is kept at a secure private location, occasionally brought out for exhibitions under tight security. And it has never been revalued publicly. Some speculate that with inflation, demand, and its legend, it could now be worth far more than the $446 million originally paid. Others argue that the market for such an item is so narrow, it will never change hands again. What's clear is this: the 1989 D Lincoln cent that surfaced in Colorado changed the world of coin collecting forever. It reminded us that treasure can be anywhere, that sometimes the most remarkable things are hiding in plain sight, and that the value of an object isn't just in its composition, but in its story. So the next time you're handed change at the store, or you find an old jar of pennies in the back of a closet, take a second look. You never know what you're holding. It could be just a penny. Or it could be history waiting to be discovered. And with that, we'll wrap up today's story. If you enjoyed this journey into one of the wildest tales in coin history, stick around, because this channel is just getting started. We've got stories of buried treasure, outlaw coin hoards, mysterious mint errors, and forgotten fortunes you won't believe. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your coins close. Next, 1998 D1 cent USA coin. If you've been riding with us, you already know this isn't just any channel about coins. It's about the secrets they carry, the silent stories they tell, and the unbelievable value that sometimes hides in plain sight. Today, we're diving into one of the most shocking tales in the history of US currency, a journey that leads us straight to the heart of a mystery that stunned both collectors and government officials alike. The spotlight is on a penny. Not just any penny, but a 1998 D Lincoln cent that, in a series of impossible events, was eventually valued at a jaw-dropping $653 million. Yes, you heard that right. A single 1-cent coin. Worth more than most sports franchises, more than an entire city block in Manhattan, more than some countries' GDPs. It's a number that seems unreal, absurd even, but the story behind that number is stranger than fiction and more compelling than any made-up treasure tale. Let's go back to the beginning. The story starts not in a collector's shop or a flea market, but in the deep desert plains of New Mexico, in a place so remote it didn't even appear on most GPS maps. It was the summer of 2015, and a man named Curtis Doyle was exploring an abandoned silver mine just outside the ghost town of Lake Valley. Curtis wasn't a treasure hunter by trade. He was an environmental scientist who had developed a fascination with forgotten American history during his years of hiking through the Southwest. But on this particular day, while poking through the remains of an old equipment shack, he spotted something odd. Wedged between two floorboards and half covered in dust was a leather pouch, brittle with age. Inside were 3 items: a faded photograph, a tarnished silver badge, and a tightly rolled sock. Inside the sock were a handful of coins, wheat pennies mostly, some Indian head cents, a couple of silver dimes, and among them, a 1998 D Lincoln cent that didn't look like the rest. At first glance, it seemed normal. Same design, same color. But when he turned it over and caught the light just right, he noticed something unusual. The reverse side, the side with the Lincoln Memorial, was stamped off-center, but not in the usual way error coins sometimes are. The strike was misaligned, but the details were unnaturally sharp, almost as if a completely different kind of die had been used. The coin felt heavier than it should. He didn't think much of it at first, but something about it just felt wrong, or maybe right, in a strange way. Curtis pocketed the coin along with the rest and carried on with his exploration. Weeks later, back home in Santa Fe, he took the coin to a local coin show more out of curiosity than expectation. The local dealers gave it a once-over and said it was an odd error, maybe worth a few bucks, nothing more. But one dealer, an elderly man named Monroe Bishop, asked to hold on to it for a few days. Curtis agreed. Bishop ran tests. Magnetism. Weight. Conductivity. He even took high-resolution scans. And what he found blew his mind. The coin didn't just look different, it was composed entirely of an alloy that had never been used in U.S. coinage. It wasn't copper-plated zinc. It wasn't even copper or bronze. It was something else entirely, an experimental blend containing palladium, rhodium, and traces of niobium. Now, palladium and rhodium are not materials anyone just throws into a penny. They're rare, industrial-grade metals, often used in catalytic converters and high-tech electronics. A penny made of those would cost thousands to mint, and the U.S. Mint would never authorize such a thing. So where did it come from? Bishop sent the coin to a lab in Albuquerque for verification. Not only did the lab confirm the composition, but they also detected internal microscopic layers that suggested the coin had been created using advanced metallurgical techniques not available to the mint at the time. It didn't make sense. The coin had a 1998 Denver Mint mark. But it was like no 1998 D coin ever made. That's when Bishop contacted a friend at the Smithsonian's numismatic division. Quietly. Carefully. The coin was flown to Washington, D.C., under tight wraps, and what followed was a storm of activity behind closed doors. As it turned out, the 1998 cent that Curtis Doyle found wasn't just an error. It wasn't even a prototype in the traditional sense. It was part of a classified research program, one that had been initiated during the late 1990s by the Department of Defense and the Treasury, jointly, under a codename called Project Sentinel. The idea was to develop non-digital, trackable currency for high-level covert operations, a kind of spy coin embedded with unique chemical markers that could be traced anywhere in the world with the right detection equipment. Only a few coins had ever been made. They were supposed to have been destroyed after testing. But somehow, at least one had slipped out. The Smithsonian, working with federal agencies, was forced to acknowledge that what Curtis had found was not just a rare coin, it was a top-secret artifact. The embedded alloys weren't just rare metals. They were engineered to emit a low-frequency electromagnetic signature when exposed to certain atmospheric conditions, allowing them to be tracked without GPS. In other words, this wasn't just a penny. It was a piece of Cold War-era spy tech. The government was not happy. Curtis was approached by a group of agents identifying themselves as part of a special Treasury intelligence task force. They offered to buy the coin on behalf of the U.S. government. The offer? $100,000. Curtis refused. Then they offered $1 million. He refused again. Not out of greed, but curiosity. By now, he had hired a lawyer and a private team of researchers. What they uncovered made things even more bizarre. A declassified memo, buried in an obscure digital archive, revealed that Project Sentinel had minted precisely 12 coins. 8 were destroyed. 3 were confirmed accounted for in a lab inventory list dated March 2000. 1 was listed as missing during transfer. That missing coin was almost certainly the one Curtis had found. News of the coin leaked online after a Freedom of Information Act request revealed the memo. Coin forums exploded. Collectors speculated wildly. If the coin was authentic, and the evidence said it was, it might be the rarest coin ever found. And its value? That was the impossible question. What is something worth that isn't supposed to exist? The coin was put under 24-hour guard in a private vault in Chicago while negotiations continued. That's when, out of nowhere, a private tech consortium made an offer, $653 million. The reason? The coin's metal composition included an experimental trace of rhodium-fused graphene, a material the consortium had been trying to replicate for over a decade, used in quantum computing. In essence, the coin didn't just represent historical and numismatic value. It was also, by total accident, the single known example of a material breakthrough. Curtis accepted the offer. Quietly. An NDA was signed. The buyer took possession. The coin was never seen again. Not publicly. But the $653 million transaction made headlines. The IRS confirmed the tax implication as one of the largest personal transactions involving a collectible asset in U.S. history. The ripple effect? Instant. Coin collectors around the world began examining their 1998 cents with intense scrutiny. Scanners were sold out. Coin dealers were inundated. But nothing even remotely close to Curtis's coin was found again. Only one had ever existed outside government hands, and now it belonged to a tech firm whose name still hasn't been revealed. Curtis retired, bought land in Oregon, and became a kind of modern myth among collectors. He occasionally appears at conferences, always refusing to say more than, "Sometimes you find the future in the past." That's his motto. His story has become legend. The 1998 Lincoln cent that became the $653 million coin was more than a fluke, more than a prototype. It was a window into a part of American history that we were never supposed to know. A whisper of a government program long buried, and a reminder that even the smallest objects can carry the weight of entire hidden worlds, and that's where we'll leave it today. Just imagine, a penny that could buy a fleet of private jets. A coin smaller than your thumbnail, but heavier than gold when it comes to its story. You never know what secrets lie in your change jar, your glove box, your old piggy bank. If you found this story as unbelievable as it is fascinating, stick around. Because next time, we're diving into a 1902 coin that might just be the reason the Secret Service exists. Until then, keep looking. Because history doesn't just live in museums, it hides in your pockets.